everyone, how is it going? Welcome to our class. Please, in the chat room or in the chat box, let us know where you watch from. Say hi. Please, we want to make sure this is a little bit of participatory between you and I. Please leave as many questions along the way. We will get those answered as we go through this class. I am Joe. I'm here with Anna.
Hey guys.
Who, if you've joined some of our classes in the past, she is usually a big part of every class I've done in the recent times because she usually comes up with the concept for me. But I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to get her in front of the camera and help me out because the project we're going to do today is something you can really do with friends and family, and we're at Halloween season or even just for the fall itself. And of course, that comes with pumpkin carving, but we're going to take a little extra spin on this one and have some more crafty creativity added to it. So before we begin, my number one lesson for this class is how to properly pronounce Siser. So say it with me. Siser. Yes, so S-I-S-E-R, that is Siser. Thank you for all listening for that. Please stick around. I don't need for you to walk away after that. So we're going to move on to what we're talking about today. Again, please let us know where you watch from. Chime in the chat room. We are decorating some fake pumpkins we got at Michael's. Decorating it with the Siser EasyPSV. So some people might not be familiar with the Siser EasyPSV yet, but it is our pressure-sensitive vinyl. So that's what PSV stands for. We use a lot of acronyms here at Siser. So we have our HTV, which is our heat transfer vinyl, and then we have our EasyPSV, which is our pressure-sensitive vinyl. So today, everything is pressure-sensitive vinyl. What are we using today, Anna?
We got all of the Halloween fall colors. So we got Black Cat, Dandelion, nice yellow. We got golden. It's kind of got a metallic effect going on.
Sweet.
Wisteria, that's kind of purple. We've got royal purple. We have so many colors in Michael's. And bright green. And I believe some of these come in matte also.
And they come in matte too.
For Michael's.
So another important thing to look at when you get your EasyPSV sheets, which you can get in packages at Michael's, is there is a backing to them that says, you just learned it, Siser on it, and it does have some grid lines on the backing of it. The gray grid lines, so all the EasyPSV we're using today is actually our permanent. So it is important to also remember which type of Siser EasyPSV you're using. Some of it might be removable type, but a majority of what you're going to use is going to be in a permanent adhesive. So this is very important when you know what you're applying on. So all the colors we just mentioned today are permanent. They do have a paper backing. Now, just to give a little bit of a catch up on how you did the production of these cut pieces we did today. What'd you cut on? What are we looking for when we're cutting EasyPSV?
So I use a Silhouette Cameo, the Plus, so it's 15-inch, I think. I actually use our recommended settings from on our website, which are also on our app. So I started there. Did a little test cut, of course, always test cut. We say that. I learned that when I started here, that you should test cut before you start cutting your designs out. So you do a little test cut. If it cuts clean and it doesn't cut too deep into the backing paper, you should be good to go.
Yes, can't stress that enough because, again, if you're familiar with our HTV, it's a different way of cutting it. Our EasyPSV has a paper backing. You do not cut in reverse either or mirror. You cut like you would normally look at it when you're applying the EasyPSV. The importance of making sure, like Anna mentioned, that your cut setting is good is because if you cut too deep into that paper backing, using the Siser application mask to lift it up can be a little bit more problematic. So definitely make sure no matter what material you're using, you perform test cuts on your vinyl cutter. And so that's going to be step one. Now, when you set this file up, you said Silhouette. did you have to manipulate anything to fit onto this, or how did you set your file up?
Like
in Silhouette Studio? Like, how did you do the measuring? So if somebody picked up this picked up this surface space, did you just measure across and long ways?
Long ways,
Okay.
yep, absolutely. And
but an oblong shape like that.
A little bit different. Yep, same thing. I definitely used a cloth tape measure so it could wrap all the way around and get in all the crevices as well, just to make sure you're using the right amount of space and material. I was going to say too, when you're pulling your material off your mat, a little trick I learned too was to pull the mat away from your material so the PSV doesn't bend and crack.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. All right. So we're going to start with the application. Now, as you can see, this is what we're doing. We're going to separate these parts. I'm going to have to flip this around so I have a little bit of frame of reference. But I noticed that you're going to be controlling the head portion of it, but there's other stuff to this.
Yes,
So do you want to kind of talk about some of the other materials that you're using and how you did that?
Yes, I will. So we've got the pumpkin, obviously, and then I picked up some green yarn to do the hair, which we'll do at the end maybe.
Yeah.
Cut some strips of this, tie in the center, pretty simple, but I can show you guys. And then this little hat is also from Michael's, obviously, called a floral pick. A lot of people use these in wreaths and things, but we thought it would be a nice little hat for the pumpkin. So we're going to use that as well. And there's a tons of different shapes and sizes. We got a black cat back here. And we made another project. So there's a tons of different styles for those. So you guys have a lot of choices.
So this is where you get to have fun.
Right.
Absolutely. So we're going to do the application and kind of cruise along. Please, if there's any questions as we go, now's the time to start asking, because we're going to be doing a lot of application during this portion of it and hopefully explaining to you. So for my portion here, the body, I also wanted to just show you, we kind of did pre-production on it, that this fake pumpkin did come with the top of the, what do you call it?
A stem.
A stem. I was trying to get more like clinical to it, like it was going to be a stem, yes. So I simply chopped the stem off. This way we have a little bit more of a flush surface so that when we glue the head on, it'll be a little bit easier. So that was step one. We lopped that off. Another question that people get about EasyPSV, do you have to prep the surface that you're going to be applying on? In this case, we don't really have to do any preparation. You want to be just cautious about, you know, what kind of surface it is going on. If you're applying on something that might have a coating on it, it might be a little bit more problematic. If you have something that you've had lying around that's collecting dust and debris, you do want to clean it off. You clean it off with simple alcohol, isopropyl, I messed that word up, solution. And then simply wipe that away and then give it some time to dry. And then you can go back and do your application with your Siser EasyPSV, and it's going to last a lot longer. Here's where the tricky part comes, because again, this is not a flat surface.
No.
So we did do the test, and it does have, obviously, like a pumpkin normally would, has a little bit of an uneven surface, very weird ridges for you. So we're going to really challenge ourselves today. And I think in this case, I'm going to show you too, because I did explain that we have application tape, which is what we recommend using when you have multiple images that you need to lift off with your EasyPSV and apply all at once. So for example, the face that Anna's going to do of the pumpkin, it's all got to be applied almost at one time. So are we going to use the mask or are we going to piece it?
I think I'm going to use the mask for this one, just because I made it a little bit extra detailed this time. So on this one, it's just yellow. But we're going to show you guys a little bit of a trick to make it look like you carved it without all the mess.
Right. So it'll give a dimension. But as you can see, all the attributes on the face, this is what I mean for the mask. You'll be able to lift your whole transfer off with the Siser application tape to lay it all down at once. Now, in this case, you could 100% peel and stick every one of those pieces. And that's the best part about working and making a jack-o'-lantern. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can have fun and turn it into a Mr. Potato Head, more or less, right?
You could absolutely do that.
That could be however you want to do it. That's kind of what I'm going to do for the body, is I'm just going to kind of peel and stick all the attributes here. I might use application tape here and there. We'll see how it goes. But I also want to show you a trick about using parchment paper when it comes to lining something up. This is not an exact science, but for example, I might have Anna show you with it.
All righty.
But we have the two colors for the face. And this is where she's going to have it designed so that it gives a dimensional look using two colors. Now, you do have to use application tape for one of these. And now what I mean is I want to turn these two colors into one transfer. So if you set that up in your art file, you can cut it with registration marks, which will help find your lineup when you go to put them together. But in case you don't want to do that, you can use a simple piece of parchment paper as an in-between to make sure your lineup is correct. I hope this makes sense. Please, again, if you have questions, we can elaborate.
Right.
So what we're going to do, Anna.
You want me to do it?
You might as well do it.
All right. So we're going to cut this piece of transfer. I don't know, Trevor, if you want to
Trevor, we might have to
switch it on over. So I'm going to cut this transfer tape a little bit bigger than what I need because I know something's going underneath that's a little bigger. So we can view here. We got the transfer, then we got the bottom piece. So what I'm going to do is peel this back. I'm going to lay it on top of my material. You usually go center down, don't you?
I do.
Center down. You can go from one side to the other, either way.
Either way.
Doing a little squeegee here. Siser squeegee. Pull it off.
So this is where it's important to make sure your cut's good because again, this is a paper backing, so you don't see any lifting. It's coming up perfectly.
Right. If you cut too deep, you'll have the paper stuck to the back here. All right.
So now this is the second color. So this is what we mean. We're going to set this up as one transfer and then apply it all at once without having to use double of the application tape. Now, what are you going to do next?
I'm going to line this up a little bit so my transfer is hanging a little off this parchment. Lay it right on top.
And this is just normal parchment paper, not butcher paper. It's just
plain old in the bacon aisle.
Yep.
So we're going to line this up. So now if I hold the sticky part up on this end, I can move this around to see where it should line up without actually sticking anything down. So that looks like about where it should be. So I'm going to stick this down. Now this piece here is on, what did I do with the squeegee?
So this is now, only this portion is bonded to the paper backing.
Right. So then what I can do is lift up this transfer on top, comes right off the parchment. Easy peasy. One second. And then it's already set up, so all I have to do is lay this down and it should be lined up perfectly.
So does this make sense on what I'm trying to explain? Because then normally for some people that might be familiar on how decal vinyl or EasyPSV works is you can create the art file with registration marks so that way you can actually line it up with a registration mark. But if you wanted to avoid wasting too much excess material, which registration marks will cause, you can do this trick. And again, all it takes is a piece of parchment paper and a little bit of an extra cut on your application tape. So does that make sense? That looks great.
All right.
Perfect.
All lined up, ready to go.
Ready to kind of cruise.
We're cruising. So I'm going to put this guy as the face here.
I'm going to turn this around and start on the other part.
So what I'm going to do also, you guys, just because it's a curved surface, you got a lot of grooves in here, I'm going to do some relief cuts. So what that means is I'm going to cut into this transfer tape, without cutting the transfer, but it's just going to give me a little bit of wiggle room when I'm going around those curves of the pumpkin. And there's no really rhyme or reason of where they're going to go.
Nope. Just don't cut into the actual transfer.
Right. We just want to make sure this is actually going to be able to curve around the pumpkin. We'll do a couple more. See here, and it looked like there was a question about a stencil for this project in the chat. And this design is actually one of our clip art packs that is sold at Michael's. So you can find all these pieces just depending on what pumpkin you want to use. You might have to size your file a little bit different in Cricut or Silhouette Design Space. So there's that.
Which is a great point too. If you've never used those art book packs, they are very awesome, especially if you're new to this world, because they're already pre-made artwork files.
So,
I'm just going for it.
All right, do it up.
I'm kind of basing it loosely on what you have here.
All right, so I'm gonna actually start mine in the center. A lot of people do wine glasses or things, so usually the trick is starting in the center of whatever you're applying onto and make sure that's stuck down first, and then scoot your way on down and over.
Yep.
Let's see.
And also, yeah, so relief cuts, which I didn't do for this one, which would probably be good. It helps find the groove of whatever you're working on. It does. I mean, between a project like this all the way to, you know, we have winter holidays around the corner, which is going to be making ornaments and all sorts of fun stuff that have awkward oblong cut or very beveled shapes to them. That's where the relief cuts really do help a lot with any of this type of application. But again, remember when you're doing your actual setup, as you can see, I'm just using my finger to find the groove. That's kind of what we're doing a lot.
Right.
You could use a squeegee, but a squeegee could be kind of abrasive on a surface like this. So you might want to just kind of finesse the spacing as to where the application is going. But you still want to make sure you're adding the pressure, because the important part is you're working with pressure sensitive vinyl. So the adhesive is going to work when you're really pushing down on it. And then when you peel your backing or peel the application tape off, you want to peel kind of against itself. So I'm kind of just rolling it off. You don't want to lift up, because when you lift up, it might actually cause your transfer to lift up with it. But when you roll against itself, you might still see lifting, but that's okay. You just kind of use your finger to keep it down. And now I get this question all the time. Can you reuse the application tape? Yes, but I wouldn't really recommend using it more than twice, because every time you touch it, it does contaminate the adhesive on it, which will cause it to be less sticky the next time you use it. So try to avoid using it more than twice, but you can. All right, I got part one.
I'm still cruising around.
Is everyone ready for has anyone started making anything for Halloween? I know we're right around the corner with it, and nothing like last minute, especially for us. Oh, you did it. Look at that.
I did it.
That's excellent.
So a little bit different, as I was saying, you guys, is this one's pretty flat, but you can always add dimension by layering.
Which I think is even cooler, because that
it kind of looks like it's carved out, I'd say, right?
Absolutely.
There we go. All right. And I also just, after you get that application tape off, you can go back and press in these creases of these pumpkins. This is very unique, a unique blank to be using. Again, the wine glasses are always tricky, but that's because it's curved one way and then the other. So
exactly.
This is a similar idea.
But that's where you really do want to use that relief cut.
Right. And you could still reuse little pieces of that if you wanted to for small.
And I'm actually reusing the application tape I just used. And this is an extremely fine, detailed portion of this one.
Mm-hmm.
Tricky
business.
My cheat sheet here.
Sorry. Yeah. That's a good one. Really, the fine details are the tricky one, but yeah, I think when I did it the first time, you just run your fingers all along these seams just to make sure it's stuck everywhere before you pull that application tape off.
You know what? We're in a world of imperfections. You know what I mean? That's the beauty about crafting. Those that are watching that are tried and true crafters, you know that sometimes, and the late great Bob Ross always told me, happy accidents. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
I think that was pretty perfect.
It is pretty bad. I'm thoroughly impressed.
Very first time, that was pretty spot on.
There you go.
So
now just
now the peel.
Just a matter of peeling.
All right. Is anyone chiming in on Halloween projects? Anything geared up for the holiday around the corner? Are you doing anything fun with the family, kids? I definitely would love to see what people are doing with the Siser products, especially the EasyPSV, costume designs. Anna, you just did one, right?
Yes, I did. And that video is coming out later today. So be on the lookout on our social.
If you're watching this replay,
it's come and find it.
It's coming. Yeah, just come and find it.
Come and find it.
No, but it's pretty awesome.
I'm excited.
I did that.
There you
like
go.
I said, I use this twice. I'm probably going to discard it. If you use it more than twice, it's cool, but I just wanted to cover my bases there.
There you go.
All right. So what's
Joe
next?
and Anna, going off of your question about what people are doing for Halloween, we have Patty here saying that she's going trunk or treating with her church family.
Oh, nice. That's a safe way.
Fun. Did you use any heat transfer or PSV to decorate?
Yeah. Decorate the bags.
Yes, the bags. Oh, people go all out for that
Candy
trunk or
bags,
treat
for
stuff,
sure.
though. Very decorative.
She said,
Very, very. Of
Yeah.
course, love it. That's awesome.
No, that's great.
Yeah. I don't know if it looked like someone up further might have missed what I said about the Clipart packs. I'm not sure though. Maybe not.
No, I think you covered it right after that.
Cover it? Okay, good.
So
Just
much.
making sure. That was easy. Peel and stick.
Peel and stick. Big chunk of black EasyPSV. All right.
All right. This one you could probably do with transfer actually though.
Are you gonna do your
Do a
trick again?
3-layer. I'll do the 3-layer.
You want to
thing.
see? Do you want to see the parchment paper trick one more time?
What did I do?
I put it.
Okay. All right.
Let's switch it back over, Trev.
This is actually going to be 3 tiers.
3
this,
tiers.
this time. Could
So-
you pass me some?
I'll keep cruising on this stuff.
Thank you. All right. So same deal. Cut this piece a little bigger than you need. So we've got the witch's legs with the green going on top. So I'm actually going to do that part first. So we got some shoes to go with this as well. So I'm going to try to plop this right in the center. I guess I could lay this over top, pick it up very carefully to make sure I cover that bottom piece. Grab this, get this all stuck down. But it was, alas. Okay, so there's piece 1. Then we're gonna put it on these legs, which in this time, I guess I can do the parchment. I'm just gonna eyeball it this time, actually, you guys. So, because I made this, actually in the file itself, in the Clipart pack, it all will line up perfectly for you. So I'm just gonna eyeball that one. It's the same thing, use your Siser squeegee. Make sure I get all those royal purple pieces onto the transfer. Pick this one up. Nice and easy. And shoes.
Got shoes.
Got shoes. Do a little
Do a
weeding
little
this
weeding.
time. Siser weeder, which I love and use for other things. Someone was using it for something funny the other day.
The weeder?
Yeah.
Well, I got some tips for this one because we have to show putting the hat in, right?
Oh,
We have
yes.
to do that.
Yeah, I think Johan was trying to use it to carve his pumpkin the other day.
Yeah, that one's going to take forever if you're using the weeder, but the weeder is a very helpful tool, I got to tell you. And if you're looking for fine tipped or fine point detail, I should say, especially for EasyPSV, our tweezers are a great tool if you prefer using that to kind of pick up fine cavities and little detail, or maybe even when you're placing it onto your project itself. But Michael's also has the tweezer pack that actually comes with a weeder and tweezer combo. So I love the weeder though.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to use the parchment paper. I lied, you guys. So we're going to put this again. I've got it on my parchment. My transfer's on here. Trying to line it up with these shoes where it should go. That looks about right. Lay it on down. Oops, I moved it a little bit. There we go. Okay, grab the squeegee. it up off that parchment, make sure it's stuck. So now you can see it's stuck down on one part. Then we're gonna lay this down and pick up those shoes.
And again, you can always do the eyeball, which is what I just did too. If you are good at doing that, I'm not saying I am. I just get lucky sometimes.
If you guys are making super intricate designs,
Yeah.
that's probably the best way to go about it, is layering using that parchment trick. But if it's only one thing, not too big of a deal.
Absolutely.
All right,
All right.
passing off these legs to you.
Passing the legs off, 'cause I think that's next, right?
That is
We'll do that
next. That would be the
before
last
this.
piece.
Okay.
Got the legs.
All right, so this is a big chunk. Since I didn't do any relief cuts for this so far, I might as well make this last piece without them. Oh man, I pushed it
Oof, right towards the bottom there.
right towards the bottom. I might have to do the relief cuts.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
man.
guys, I have to sell myself out.
Yeah, and then the little buckles that were on the shoes, those are just easy to peel and stick, so we can do that. After
So
that,
I'm just gonna do a few random spots. It's not an exact science, as mentioned, just to try to not cut into your design, try to cut close to the EasyPSV as you can.
So in the meantime, we have a question. This is going up based off of our Halloween theme here. What are you dressing up as for Halloween?
you gonna go first, or do you know yet?
I am still debating it.
Ooh,
I have options. I don't know what's gonna go over the best. But I might have to steal Anna's costume that she just made here because it's pretty sweet.
it is pretty cool, but I might have to make you a Joe size one because my costume has been customized to be Anna size. And
I think it would be a little bit funnier, right?
yeah, you can rock my crop top.
Yeah, the crop tops.
They're my favorite thing.
Okay.
You got it?
I don't know. What are you gonna do though? Are you wearing it or you got a different costume?
I might have another thing up my sleeve. I haven't decided yet. I might recycle a costume. And I actually did use our PSV for it last year
Did you really?
before I even started working here.
Yeah, Anna wasn't even with Siser at the time.
Yep,
That's great.
it was. It was good.
Goes to show.
Yeah, I made a little sign that I wore on my neck, and it I used acrylic from Home Depot, painted it, put the PSV on.
Put the PSV on.
Yep, finishing touches, good. I think I just used white. That's good.
All right.
There we go.
Ooh,
Almost.
that's all right. I'm
Yeah.
really, really pleased with that result here. Obviously, again, talking about like reusing the application tape. If you do relief cuts, that's the double-edged sword of it. It helps find a really nice application like what I just got there. So all three of those colors that Anna just masked, I was able to apply that all at once pretty flawlessly, but your application tape does go through the ringer, so you can't really use it again.
Right, and don't just get discouraged if something pulls up. You can always put the application back down
Absolutely.
and press again just to make sure.
Just make sure you add some pressure onto it. And there is a difference in where this is going to live. Obviously, if you're going to finish this up, if it's going to be in outdoors, it might take a little bit more of a beating than if it was inside, right? By weather, by UV, by whether you get terrible winters like we do in Michigan. There's all those variables. But if this is stored inside, it's not that much. It's not going to really go through any kind of peeling or cracking or anything like that. So that's one thing to also remember where you're going to place it. Okay.
Shoe buckles.
Do you want to put the shoe buckles on as I put the, no, it's not. I'm going to do the broomstick.
All right.
I've been patiently waiting for this part.
So excited. Finishing touches.
Finishing touches.
Yeah, and that's what you're saying too about rolling that application tape back. If you're going over other PSV you've already applied,
Exactly.
you can roll that application tape right back on itself so it doesn't pick anything else up that you already put down.
Right. Because another thing too, when you're doing the weeding process for the EasyPSV permanent, you do want to be cautious that the adhesive of the EasyPSV permanent doesn't stick to itself.
Oh my gosh.
We've all been there, right? Doesn't matter how professional you are, but if you lift up a piece of the EasyPSV permanent and it sticks to another piece that you didn't want it to, you may run into issues. So just be pretty cautious with how you're weeding your EasyPSV, right?
Right. If you guys have a big design, it's a lot easier to pull a little bit back, cut it off, keep moving your way around, because once it gets stuck to itself, it's pretty tricky. To get off. But I have used the weeder to separate pieces like that. Very fine.
And as you see, I mean, it peels off really easily once you got it on there, once it's laid on top of itself. Again, I didn't do relief cut, so I could save that if I want. Now we literally have two little pieces. I'm gonna let you kind of wrap that up.
Yeah, it's just like a sticker.
Yeah.
Pretty easy for stuff that's blocky and not super intricate. You can stick it right on with your fingers.
Again, just peel and stick is literally the best part of what you want to do. So if you're setting up a project like this for, again, the family, your friends, yourself, I mean, have fun with it, because you could literally cut variations of stuff. You could create it in different ways that people could have their own unique jack-o'-lantern look. The overall design itself, this is where you get to have fun and be creative on it. And again, this file was already a pre-made artwork that is available in the art book packs that are available at Michael's, that have a ton of awesome SVGs for all sorts of holidays, for sports, and for occasions.
Right.
So there's a ton of stuff, especially for those that get discouraged about creating artwork. I understand that can be a little bit scary.
Yeah.
Pun intended, right?
No.
That's what we're doing, right? It's scary stuff we're doing.
Yeah. But the Clipart pack, though, is a great starting point if you guys aren't comfortable yet creating your own artwork. So, yeah.
Now it looks like we got a headless horseman here. So Anna's gonna explain kind of how to set up the rest of the head.
Right.
And what we did for the hair effect that we have here. So
yeah, you could use a bunch of different things. I thought about using straw too, but we're gonna use yarn. It's a little flimsier. But at first, I'm gonna grab this little pick hat. And what's nice about these pumpkins is they're styrofoam. So you can stick this right in.
But Anna, this is where I got to showcase the action of the Siser weeder.
I'm jumping the gun here.
This is a great example of another tool you could use. Again, the Siser weeder is just literally a sharp pick. But we were having some fun trying to test out getting the wire into this foam pumpkin. Might be a little challenging, but what I did is I actually took the Siser weeder and pierced a hole into the start. Oh, this is kind of scary too.
Yeah.
Look at it. If you need it to hold your Siser weeder, feel free.
Oh my gosh, that's like a pin cushion.
I know, it's kind of cool.
That's so funny.
But that's what I did. Obviously, be careful. Don't let kids mess around with this. But now I have a hole started up, which will be
much easier for me than watching Joe struggle doing it yesterday.
That was like, who allowed this? I felt like
I'm not sure how I did it.
Just like repeating on this.
All right. So we actually did cut a little bit off this stem with some wire cutters, which they also sell at Michael's for floral things. I don't know what I did with them. There we go.
Wire cutters.
All right. So we've got it in here, but it's kind of floppy. So we're going to pull out our handy dandy glue gun here. Joe's favorite thing.
So I've never really used a glue gun until Anna started writing up some of my recent Michael Zoom classes.
And I could not believe it.
And so this is, again, I try to stress this. I'm an educator here at Siser. I know the ins and outs of all the products that we make here. But when it comes to actually like coming up with fun crafts like this, I really do lean on Anna for a lot of help. So she decided to get me out of my comfort zone and use a glue gun for the first time.
There we go.
Look at
quick dry too.
And I didn't realize how effective those things are. They're an amazing tool. I gotta tell you.
Oh my gosh. How did you not use them for like school projects or something? Nothing?
I was in the days of using a glue stick.
Oh man.
Like everything was a Elmer's glue stick.
Jeez.
It was like I didn't know that there was
You know how
technology that you had to plug in to glue. I was like, no.
This would take very long with a glue stick.
Get the glue stick and start painting on your friend's face or something, you know?
All right, so for the hair, I kind of just eyeballed it on where it would fall nicely to hang off of our lovely lady right there. So what I did a little prep. So I just cut a bunch of strips the same length, and then I tied them in the middle so it'd be easier to glue on. So you're not gluing individual little pieces of yarn onto your material. Okay, yep, got it. Okay, so same deal. So all I did was measure about, it's maybe a foot. Ooh.
3.
Cut little pieces. I don't know, do like 6 or 7 of them. And you can keep adding more as you go, depending how full you want your hair of your pumpkin to be. Do a couple more here. And Michael's has a ton of different colors of yarn that you can pick out. We thought green would be best.
I think green is quite effective for
very witch-like.
But I'd probably do like a green and purple medley. Maybe.
Yeah, they have multicolored yarn too, so that's always an option. But I picked stuff that was a little bit thicker, just so I didn't have to do as much of this cutting here. All right, so I'm gonna say that's good. So you cut a little extra piece here just to be able to tie it in the middle. And I've seen a lot of people do braids, so you could cut a bunch of strips and do like pigtail braids like you do for a scarecrow. There's many options. So we got that down. All right, so now we got our hair.
That's perfect.
Good. All right, so this big one, I'm just gonna get a little, let's see, this glue stick, this will reach. I get a little dab of glue in the center. Generous on the glue. I'm gonna stick this right up underneath this hat. Press down. Kind of spread it out where you want it to lay. And this, you can also go back around and glue this down, which I might do a little bit of. Let's see.
Mullet jack-o'-lantern, I love it.
It's got her hair. That's good. All right, gonna put some on the side. Probably not gonna do all of it because could add quite a bit more in the back. Hopefully he can still see this. Sticking it right up underneath this hat. Laying it flat down. Again, like I said, I could go back under here, lift all this up, maybe put a line of glue to make sure it stays in place. One more on this side.
I definitely love that dimension.
In the pumpkin.
So cool.
That was a last minute change.
Looking at the feedback on it alone, it does actually look like it's
been cut out. So that's actually a trick you guys can do in both Silhouette and Cricut. It's an offset feature. So it's very easy. You just duplicate your design or actually I don't even think you have to do that. You just hit offset and it'll make the extra pieces for you. Just scoot them over a little bit. And we have our lady here. Sorry, Trevor, I'm moving all over the place. It's like, what camera's on? So we got our lady here.
All right, so that's what and obviously, like you said, you could take a little bit more time, finesse the rest of the hair.
Add more.
You know, I mean, as you can see with the one we completed earlier, full head of hair, but you could have fun with it. This is just basically the idea of how you can get a jump off to creating the rest of the head of the pumpkin. Mm-hmm. So we're there. I mean,
do you want to do the final gluing, Joe?
I don't know if it's going to be as successful.
Oh my God.
It's just full on glue?
Yep, pretty much.
Guys. All right, so.
Or maybe you hold an
I was going to say.
How's that?
The logistics right now are just not going to be very, very good.
I'm just going to look at that. All right, so I can actually reach. We're just going to go on.
All right, so we're just loading up the top of the base pumpkin. I'm looking at it. I probably could have moved that up a little bit higher, but it's all right. You know what you could do? You could dress it. We didn't do it, but you could use like maybe tulle or something and put like a scarf.
Stick that on there before it dries.
Oh.
Make sure it's all lined up there. Oop, let me move this one.
I got to see it in the feedback. There we go.
It
All right.
should dry fairly quickly. But you can always move it around too. And you can always go back and add a little bit underneath here and there as well.
Creation.
It looks great.
It looks like Joe made it. Anna,
It's.
Joe. Yeah, there you go.
I like your face better though.
I'll give you that.
I do. It
For
looks
sure.
like a car pump.
But I mean, because the placement, I would certainly like add maybe something here, like you could use like a tool or something
Oh, yeah.
to like create a
Create
scarf
stuff.
or something.
Oh,
like that.
absolutely.
But look at this though. I mean, how much like, and obviously teamwork, that's also why I wanted to bring Anna in on this, because this is, again, I can't stress it, to have fun with your crafting, with people around you. Like, it's a whole thing that this is totally kid friendly outside of let the adults use the tools and stuff like that. But I think there's a lot of possibility for things you can do. Obviously, if you're watching this live right now, Halloween is around the corner. If you're watching this hashtag replay, I hope you had a great Halloween. But a lot of new crafts and ideas like this. So what did you guys think? Any last minute questions for this project? Please give us some feedback. If you're still with us, definitely let us know what you think of the project. If you have any Halloween projects you're doing with Siser products, what you'd like to see us do next.
Mhm.
That always helps us out. For next class projects, we have a ton coming up. So getting some feedback of new project ideas with Siser products definitely helps us out.
Right. Always
so-
up for suggestions,
Yeah.
you guys.
Yeah,
What do you
we're
want to
getting some great feedback now. Patty is saying this
Oh,
looks so much
no,
fun. She can't wait to
Christmas.
do this project. Yeah, just multiple comments. This looks great. I think we need a gnome for Christmas. That's a good
Yes,
idea.
that's such a good idea. Maybe with a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
Mm.
I see the question Anna mentioned for the cut settings.
Oh yeah.
Actually, if you go to michaels.com and you look up any of the Siser products that you're using, there are cut settings on their description in there. We definitely push the Siser app.
Oh yeah.
The app that you can download on your phone has all the Siser products that you get at Michaels, but we have all the application instructions, the cutting recommendations for all sorts of stuff. We have video content, all sorts of fun stuff. It's totally educational. That's all that the app is, but it's for free. It helps you out. And obviously all the contents that we use today are available at Michael's. So yeah, thank you guys all so much. That's a,
Oh, it was somebody.
oh, okay.
Cool.
Thank you. Yes. Please make sure you share. If you guys are on social medias, please give Siser North America a like on social medias. We want to see what you're doing with the Michaels projects that you're doing. Obviously, hashtag make it with Michaels as well. We definitely want to see some inspiration in what you guys are working on. And of course, as educators, want to get your feedback and know what you want to do. Maybe we will do gnomes.
I think that's a good idea. I like that.
Wild idea.
I like that.
So thank you all so much for watching. I'm Joe,
I'm Anna.
and thank you so much.
See you next time.
Next time.